Hi, everybody. Well, it is fantastic that I've got chocolate in my right arm and Fluffy in my left, because this dear little guy is so smart that he will stay back here in the cubby hole like up to a minute before we go live. And it's like he knows, and then he jumps down and makes a game of it. Well, tonight, because we had a technical delay, and he knew that we were not going forward, he just sauntered in here, and I got to pick him up, and it's been a while since you've seen Chocolate and Fluffy together. And that in this perilous seeming time of what feels like a dripping apocalypse, every single day there seems to be coming something that kind of crashes into our consciousness and makes us feel more vulnerable. And that question about, is this a century that might not make it all to the end? Well, when I hold these little guys, my heart and my mind feel like, yes, life is going to prevail. And to be able to hold these loving animals is like a metaphor for everything that I wish that all of us could experience more and more agape love with each other. And now I'm going to let these two down. I'm going to try to see if they'll go in their cubby holes, and maybe they'll stick around. And a couple 100 miles south of where I am in Albuquerque, you come to a place called Las Cruces, and the huge white sands missile range. And this week, on September 12th, reporter Algernon de Massa at the Las Cruces Sun News headlined, "Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, New Mexico sees massive migratory dead birds." He reported, biologists from New Mexico State University and White Sands Missile Range examined nearly 300 dead migratory birds Saturday, September 12th at Knox Hall on the university's main campus. Over the past few weeks, various species of migratory birds are dying in unprecedented numbers of unknown causes. That was a report from Martha Desmond, who is a professor at New Mexico State University's Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Ecology. "It is terribly frightening," Desmond says. "We've never seen anything like this. We are losing probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of migratory birds." In August, large numbers of birds were found dead at White Sands Missile Range and at the White Sands National Monument in what was thought to perhaps be a separate incident. They're not sure. Is it a separate, or is this a huge covering the whole state of New Mexico? And if so, why? Yesterday, Tuesday, September 15th, I talked with freelance reporter Austin Fisher in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Recently, he and some friends went on a tubing trip in the Rio Grande River near Velarde, New Mexico, and that's a little north of Santa Fe. He and his friends stopped at a picnic area and decided to get out on a sandy beach and explore a little. That's when he was confused to see so many dead birds. He recorded a short walk along the bird bodies, at least 200 of them, he thought, and said that it looked like a flock that had dropped straight down to the ground, dead. Aldemar.
You think it was the freeze?
I have no idea.
Al Damasa at the Las Cruces Sun told me that people are reporting dead birds everywhere, and all kinds of birds from small to large. Even hummingbirds have been found dead. Many samples of the birds have been collected this past week to go to the Ashland, Oregon Fish and Wildlife Laboratory that can do very, very detailed necropsies that they can't do here. And as soon as I know more about what is found, I'll report here and at my news website, earthfiles.com. And if you would like to stay current with what is happening in this mysterious and terrible large bird die-off in New Mexico and what is being learned as time goes on, go to inaturalist.org and search for the topic dead birds. See the red arrow pointing to the search button. For example, here is a map showing where dead birds have been reported by citizens in the United States, not necessarily tied to this current phenomena in New Mexico, but it shows how much death tracing there is from citizens reporting in the United States. Last week, I interviewed retired NSA and Goddard Space Flight Control communications technician Ron Holland, who was listening to NASA's communication with Apollo 11 astronaut Neil Armstrong on July 20th, 1969. That was right after he was the first human to step onto the moon. Well, Ron Holland was at Goddard where he worked, and he was listening to the 10-second delay of the radio transmission between NASA and astronaut Neil Armstrong on the moon. With his own ears, Ron heard Armstrong say, quote, "They are watching us from the crater," close quote. And some of you wrote in comments that Ron Holland's use of the words dark side was not correct. Well, I sent Ron your comments, and here is his reply. Hello, Ms. Howe. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. And he's referencing Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. The moon does not rotate for us on the Earth. We always see the same side day and night. In fact, the next time you are able to observe the moon in daylight, please notice features appear exactly as they do in the evening, only fainter. Additionally, the back or dark side, as it was called, when I was a child growing up, has some illumination from sunlight during our Earth's evening. But the lunar backside photo taken from an orbiting spacecraft that I was shown, and he means the photographs of the backside of the moon, it was dark except for starlight. To see details of the tall structure with the 90-degree angles in the dark shadows where it stood would have required massaging of the raw image as you might with Photoshop. However, I could still see a number of vertical right angles rising up several stories. And that suggested to me, looking at the photo, that it was a constructed structure of some height. The prints I observed were in fact already processed, but only as NASA wanted, which I think he is implying they wanted it left shadowy. It is hope this answer is sufficient to allay the doubts some may have about our moon, its rotation, and the backside, also known historically as the dark side. Thank you for your comments. In my opinion, Earthfiles is always truthful and carefully researched. Best wishes, Ron Holland. I appreciate that comment, and I know me, growing up as a child, that we all talked about the dark side of the moon, knowing it was the backside, and that was just the way we grew up. It was just called the dark side, not ignoring the fact that it gets light. Now, there's one more piece here from space.com that I thought I would share with you. They say the side of the moon that perpetually faces Earth is known as the near side. The opposite or back side is the far side. Sometimes the far side is called the dark side of the moon, space.com. But when the moon is between the Earth and the sun during the new moon phase, and that's when it's dark in the sky, the backside of the moon is bathed in sunlight, close quote. Now, I did receive 3 or 4 other emails from people saying that they had relatives or they knew somebody that they had talked to after Apollo who said that they knew and heard that Neil Armstrong said that there were UFOs or craft lined up on a crater near them. And some of it is anecdotal, but it seems that it does continue to reinforce what Ron Holland heard with his own ears as a communications specialist at Goddard. And I think that is really important, that after all of these decades that we finally are hearing from somebody who actually heard the words in the 10-second delay from NASA, and that he saw photos of the dark side, backside of the moon with that structure. Now, in other outer space news, a year and a half ago on March 9th, 2018, the Washington Post headlined, "The military keeps encountering UFOs. Why doesn't the Pentagon care?" I would argue that the issue is not the Pentagon caring, it's Pentagon cover-up since World War II. The author of those words was Christopher Mellon, who served from November 1999 until January 2002 as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence in the Clinton and George W. Bush administrations. He today is a private equity investor and an advisor to the privately owned media and scientific research company known as To the Stars Academy for Arts and Science, or TTSA, founded by Tom DeLonge, former guitarist with the rock band Blink-182. Mr. Mellon writes about military pilot interactions with UFOs and says, quote, "On at least 2 occasions, F-18 fighters were guided to intercept these UFO vehicles and were able to verify their location, appearance, and performance." And we all know that as well from December 16th, 2017, when there was the release in the New York Times and Politico and the Washington Post. And since then, there have been 2 or 3 other disclosures. Notably, these encounters occurred in broad daylight and were independently monitored by radars aboard multiple ships at sea and aircraft. According to naval aviators I have spoken with at length, the UFO vehicles were roughly 45 feet long and the color white. Yet, these mysterious UFO aircraft easily sped away from and outmaneuvered America's front-line fighter jets without a discernible means of propulsion in the UFOs. If these UFO craft really are not from Earth, then the need to figure out what they are is even more urgent, close quote. One American who says he knows firsthand that UFOs and extraterrestrial biological entities interact with Earth is a talented remote viewer and astral projector who joined me on my July 8th, 2020 Earthfiles broadcast with his remote viewed information about the Mage Brazil UFO shootdown, capture, and kill alleged of tall, white-skinned, dirty blonde-haired alien entities. Recently, he texted me, quote, "I was warned to stay away from the UFO recovery program, South America and beyond," and he means after he did the show here in July. Does the United States have a 2020 year highly classified official shoot down UFOs program? UFO investigator Len Stringfield, an author of this very important book, Situation Red, first published in 1977, told me face to face that in the 1950s there was a standing order to shoot down UFOs, and he knew it because that's when he, Len, was in the Air Force. He told me, "Linda, we lost so many of our pilots trying to carry out that order." And he thought the program was stopped. But in the past 2 to 3 decades, there have been hints from whistleblowers that the United States, and maybe Russia and China, still try to shoot down UFOs to expand their back engineering of advanced technologies for weapons development and other applications that would give a superior advantage in Earth geopolitics. So Buddy was letting me know that a current UFO shoot down and recovery program is still active and might be why the U.S. Air Force shot down the craft in Mage Brazil in mid-May 2020. But why were the 3 tall, white-skinned, dirty blonde-haired entities on board ultimately killed? The first story was that 1 died and 2 were retrieved in a capture. And the current story is that all 3 died. When I received that text from Buddy about the warning, I replied back, "Why would you be receiving a warning now?" And here is an excerpt from our discussion last weekend. What do you know about the reason that the person in some kind of power contacted you and, quote, warned you to stay away from the UFO recovery program?
This was a multi-superpower organization that operated in South America and around the world with this UFO recovery project, and they were freely sharing data for a while. And my understanding is in the past 10 years, that's changed dramatically, and it's mostly the United States and some South American countries, and I think it's the hottest issue. I mean, aside from ufology being one hot potato, the hottest potato is the shoot-down program, because there's major ethical questions surrounding it. It comes back to that thing of power and weaponizing this technology. When you have a solid craft, and we can definitely prove it's not made by humans, and it's staffed by non-humans, that information is more powerful than any weapon. Just the information is transformative to society. And it's so important for us to know, just like it was so important for us to know that the universe didn't revolve around us, that we revolve around the sun.
Well, then isn't it important for there to be an announcement that there are dozens of extraterrestrial craft and bodies that are preserved, and they have been for the last 70 years in different parts of the world?
It's crucial.
Yes, and to make it constantly be behind a wall of national security is weakening this planet terribly.
The government has allowed crashed material to be examined and even talked about in newspapers, and some of its constituent nanomaterial isotopes that are not from the solar system. Just to have a government and different organizations able to show that material, that is colossal information.
And it is puzzling that 70 years ago in the 40s, the beings that were associated with craft in the Roswell region were mostly grays, not 7-foot tall, white-skinned beings that have, I think the term was dirty blonde hair. What is that relationship between the grays, the tall, dirty blonde hairs, the reptiles, on and on and on? There's different types of species.
I think it's like the craft themselves. There have been so many types of craft witnessed throughout history, and different craft are for different purposes. We create different vehicles on Earth for different purposes, and they are each staffed with different types, with different skills and abilities depending on their mission. Many have speculated that in an exploration of solar systems and galaxies, that advanced civilizations would meet another advanced civilization. And at that moment, they have a decision to make. How should we interact? Should we cooperatively explore the greater universe together and be more efficient? And I think that's the case in most circumstances. Even Tom DeLonge talks about they've been interacting with us for thousands of years, and that people within the government have said that to him. All the information they garnered over 15 years of just military UFO encounters, they came back with this list of vulnerabilities that the United States has. And the vulnerabilities were not from the power systems or propulsion systems or anti-gravity systems. Our biggest vulnerabilities were from psychic abilities, things like the ability to read people's minds, the ability to control the thoughts of decision makers, the ability to pass objects through another object.
They know the ETs have that ability.
Yes. And the government and Congress has been briefed to the fact by Chris Mellon. They say it was a leak, but many people have said it was a hack, that they hacked into the briefing that Chris Mellon and Louis Elizondo and several others, I believe Harry Reid was with them too, when they would brief these different groups within the government, the Armed Services Committee and the Science and Technology Committee and so forth. They had these slides that they would present and talk about the technology, the military encounters, and the consequences of this, and all the things you would imagine would be presented in a major congressional briefing like that. And they're all these powers of consciousness. You can see in UFO case after UFO case, there's so many consciousness issues. The craft will know stuff in the future, will know where the waypoint is. Like they knew where Commander Fravor's waypoint was on his jet fighter. And the only way you could know that is by either knowing the future or reading consciousness.
Well, telepathy has long been the association between the abductees and the ETs. They don't talk. It's all interaction with the language center of the human brain, and that means that the ETs are accessing in real time microseconds of information in a human brain.
I believe that. And I have a device that's an EEG, an electroencephalogram, and it allows me to see my different brain waves. And brain waves are not just some ethereal woo-woo thing. They are real hertz of electricity, real definable amounts of electricity and wave patterns. And different brain waves have different wave patterns and energy levels. Just like if you have a radio, you can pick up signals from antennas that are broadcasting different hertz. Non-humans can do that with our consciousness.
Maybe the government is nervous about the non-humans, the extraterrestrial biological entities, communicate telepathically, access human brains, know what we are thinking, know that the pilot is contemplating moving to a very specific position. It means that the President of the United States, the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, anybody and everybody human, their minds are accessible to extraterrestrials. And maybe this is the reason why the government feels threatened and that they haven't told people.
Maybe they fear the power of everyone in society having the ability to see to other people's hearts, to see when someone's lying, to see when someone's being selfish, to see when someone's thinking murderous thoughts. And maybe the 1% power brokers don't want everyone to realize this stuff. It's a very evil thing to hold back such crucial information at such a crucial, pivotal time. Humanity is teetering on the fulcrum right now, and it's not that far in the future. You don't have to be psychic to look at the population growth versus the finite resources and the planet. People call it convergence. All of these incredible apocalyptic, eschatological doomsday scenarios are becoming more and more probable as time passes.
Right. That would explain why Elon Musk says that by 2050, he's going to have 1 million people from Earth in the base on Mars. I've always thought he must have been read into a program and knows that for Homo sapiens sapien to survive, they've got to get some of the population off of Earth to someplace else because future climate change is going to become rougher, worse, and that there probably will be a lot of population that will die in the face of unending fires, lack of crops, no food, no place to be.
Suffering.
This is the last point in the timeline that we all have to change that.
You're exactly right. This is that pivotal fulcrum moment. You know, when that small group of people go to another planet and start living there or another moon, they will look back at Earth in a way that we don't now, that we don't look at how precious and beautiful our planet is and how wondrous it is. You know, I used to be able to go fishing all over, all these different places, and catch fish. You can't even do that nowadays. Any fish you pull out of the ocean is going to have toxins in it. It's just an indication of how our biosphere is crashing. I know that humans could have a wonderful, deep, loving bond with all the different creatures in the universe.
Which makes it even weirder that the United States shot down a craft from someplace else that had 3 tall white beings in it and ended up dying. And they could be the answer to if everything were out in the open and we had some sort of an insight about how to feed and clean this entire world.
We know one of the benefits that was listed in the ATIP conclusions was there are some locations of repeat extraterrestrial visits. These are nuclear sites. We hear time and time again how these craft make appearances at nuclear sites, like the most recent incident at Malmstrom that Harry Reid hinted about in New York Magazine about a year ago. This is another recent Malmstrom incident where non-humans turned off the missiles, like has been reported time and time again. They're not being too subtle. They don't want us to destroy ourselves either. We can think about the doomsday scenario and how insurmountable our challenges are, those of us who want a better future for humanity and our biosphere, to those who are in the government, in positions of power, who can release some of this information. It needs to be released faster. We need disclosure yesterday.
It's confirmation that what came down in New Mexico after World War II were extraterrestrial biological entities and their advanced craft. We need the confirmation of what made headlines 70 years ago. And you know, as I have thought about this question of why is it that the human family hasn't been told by power brokers, leaders, power broker ETs, whoever it is that runs Earth, that we are not alone in this universe, that there are all kinds of other consciousnesses that go in and out of this solar system, in and out of this planet. And recently, in a strange way, the question of why not tell a whole species is coming up also in the questions about should the world be told everything there is to know about the COVID-19 pandemic, and that there are now insights that somebody who would be in charge, let's say, of a nation might decide not to tell the truth to avoid panic. And is there a parallel? Well, in both cases, and I'd be interested in what you think, in both cases, a pandemic, other life in the universe, I would always want to know the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And I think that's where we get stronger. And I think that's what this world needs. And I can also look at back 70 years ago during World War II, and I can imagine the discussion between Dwight Eisenhower and Winston Churchill and others, like George Marshall, and that there might have been arguments we can't tell the world, which is what Prime Minister Churchill is supposed to have said. We have to go another 50 years or the stock markets will crash, religions will crumble. Well, what did they know specifically in the World War II that Prime Minister Churchill allegedly said those words that we cannot hear today in 2020, long past 50 years after the war? And my own sense is that we're in such a revolutionary time, geophysically, astronomically, the world's social orders, everything, climate, it's all changing. It's all seemingly agitated toward some other point on the timeline. Wouldn't this be a perfect time to tell us all the truth about what is known by a privileged few about other life and other consciousness in this universe? Ultimately, I would think, if there is survival of Earth life, which may not be guaranteed either, but if there is survival of Earth life, both on the surface and underground, to go on for another century and another century without knowing all of the truth about the genetically manipulated history of primates on this planet and the creation of several species, including ours. And all of what I'm saying is another one of the layers, like a torte cake, underneath what Chris Mullen and Luis Elizondo and so many others are talking about. They would like to see the white world have more of the truth, would like to see more of the development and evolution of whatever advanced technologies there are be out in the white world. And if it doesn't happen, does that mean for a century or two, or who knows, that we'd always have a black world working in relationship with the cosmos while the rest of the planet was always kept dumb and blind? That seems to be something's goal. And I hope that all of you who come here on Wednesday nights and we share trying to crack at the policies of denial and lies, that you share with me the feeling, the conviction that we all should be told the whole truth now, just like we should be told the whole truth and everything that is known about the pandemic and any other crisis that comes, and that when we get to the moon, if Elon Musk is successful, and if John Brandenburg's book, Death on Mars, has any factual base in terms of archaeology, that wouldn't be suppressed, that we wouldn't start on another planet, Mars, with lies about that history either, or what was discovered. It seems like this is the agitated time of the 21st century for all of the lies to be ripped open and start in a new age where maybe it would help all of humanity better survive. And that's the way Buddy Bolton feels as well, strongly. And in his talent of being able to remote view and astral project, it is interesting that I think that he was quite accurate in many of the things that he said to me in that interview in July about Mage Brazil, and that he is not the only one who has said to me that it was a real event, it was a real shoot down of a real craft that was not from here. We deserve to know that as well. But in my own sort of world here, the one thing I'm always trying for is the pressure of fact and trying to get some evidence. So I appeal yet again to those of you out there who may have some first-hand information about the shoot down. Is there a policy of shooting down UFOs that the United States, China, Russia, others share in secretly? And that is what Len Stringfield said to me was the case back in the 1950s, that we had a shoot down UFO policy. Now, the question of aggression on their part is really unknown to us. And therefore, it seems hard to believe that the United States would have a one-sided decision that they were going to shoot down just for technology. It's very murky and unclear. And it may be that there have been hostilities and retaliations that have been going back and forth like tit for tat between non-humans and humans, as humans do to humans. And that may underlie such a policy. But I sure would like to know what the facts are. And I know that some of you who have emailed me about some of your background working in NASA, working in some of the space agencies, and that you are reluctant to be public, maybe that nights like this will help convince you that now is the time to go on the record. And I'd like to be the person asking you questions if you can. So on that note, dear Peggy, what comments and questions do we have tonight on this evening of September 16th, 2020?
Hi, Linda. First, I'd like to thank everybody for their super chats. So thank you, Moonbird. Thank you, Jeffrey Rizzo, Lyle Neep, Richard Gmail, Vicky Martinez, David Goodrich, Witches and Whips, Dolores Graff, Jamie Marks, and Sexy Sadie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really appreciate. Now, what about a question?
The first question is a question about shooting down UFOs. And the viewer would like to know, why are they still shooting down UFOs? If UFOs have technology and can use anti-gravity to get around, then wouldn't they have weapons?
Yes, the craft have weapons. The implication of this story, and that is an excellent question, how in the world would we ever, any human made vehicle, be able to shoot down an advanced craft? And at least what has been said from the investigations that I did with Trajano and Robert, who did have some firsthand information, and he was visited and told sternly that he was not specifically to talk to me. In this sort of trying to understand exactly what happened, and Buddy talked about this, there is the implication that we have done a lot of advanced technology back engineering from whatever craft we have gotten, whatever help we have gotten from other intelligences. And that might be in that category of what came up recently when the president was saying that we had weapons that no one knew anything about. And the way it ended up being explained was in the nuclear category. But maybe if we knew the whole truth, maybe the United States now has beam weapons that have been described as emanations from the aerial craft that can destroy anything. And would that be the kind of technology that was used outside of Mage? Because remember, there were eyewitnesses, and there were eyewitnesses who said that there was some kind of a beam that went to the UFO. And then in the letter from the whistleblower, It also talked about a technology that the Brazilian government and Air Force were not familiar with, that the US had. So, irony of ironies, this may be like levels, that whatever happened in Mage Brazil may have been the use of a brand new, really advanced, I'm going to just say beam weapon. And that it were, maybe the first receiver were the three dirty blonde non-humans in the craft or crafts. That's still not quite clear either. And there it would be like we Americans don't know anything about what the United States actually has as weapons. And if the weapons are back engineered from extraterrestrial technology, and the Mage Brazil is a demonstration of one that brought down a craft, that might be why it is so sensitive, why everybody has been told to keep their mouths shut. Nothing is really clear at this point. But when I say not clear, the details and the facts where you wrestle them down and they are firm, I think it's fair to say that the United States is the aggressor, that Brazil was asking the US for help, and that whatever the dirty hair, I'm using that phrase, the dirty blonde hair as it was described, whatever those tall white beings were, and why were they there, and how did the US and Brazil come to be in a position to shoot down one or two in the first place? That's all the part we don't know, the details. And making it all possible might be a superior technology that none of us have seen yet, know nothing about, but that it is an American back-engineered technology. That's the implication. The question also facing us is, if something like a shoot down east of Mage Brazil this year is possible with a technology that was extremely advanced, then does that make it easier in the next few months for there to be truth about what happened in Mage that would lead finally to what we all want, are the headlines and the honesty and the straightforward description? Are we alone in this universe? No, we're not. And start getting what would then be the completely pivotal new paradigm on the planet of this part of a century that finally got some straight answers. And then we might start moving into an age where if there are other intelligences that are friendly, neutral, and not hostile, and we started having some sort of public exchange with, I think that alone, just getting to that point, would open up the huge thousands of years of lies and denials and manipulations that we still have to face, that we have a concocted history, and we need a straightforward, honest history. And would any of the future be able to get to that sort of a level of what we would like if everything we are doing is to bring down UFOs to make weapons? The weapons side of this seems to get in the way of trying to understand and relate to what exactly is in this universe. And I think that's another one of these big, choppy areas and in this timeline now, that there's so much, it seems, violence at so many levels, that maybe we should all pray to have something occur which would prove to us that something didn't want us all annihilated. It's such a strange time. What about another question?
A viewer was asking, are the Earth leaders working for the Greys, or are they working with the Greys?
It is an excellent question, and I think yes and no could apply as an answer, meaning maybe in some cases yes, and in other cases no. The gray types, as far as September 16th, 2020, because everything keeps changing, perspectives keep changing, my own as well. But on this day, I would say that what's coming down as maybe the more correct picture is that the gray ones with the black eyes that come in all of these different shapes would be in the category of artificial intelligence, some even like dolls that might be an avatar for something that is an energy form someplace else. And that when you are dealing with the gray beings, there's only one group that I have consistently heard, whether it was from a military person or an abductee, you hear this word emerther, E-M-E-R-T-H-E-R, that came up in the Army sergeant who saw binary code in his mind's eye. It's come up in a few other cases, specifically tall, again, that 7-foot range, which was applied to 6.6 feet to the alleged white-skinned tall ones in Brazil, so both tall, and that the emerthers are supposed to have some interest in seeing humanity survive. But having any lockdown on what exactly the facts and the truth are, that's what we all need. So the grays, when you hear about the grays, so much of it are the little ones that are around a bed, and they seem to be the facilitators of an abduction. But on the other side, in abductions, there often is the extraction of eggs, the extraction of sperm, the extraction of tissue, fluids. And the human would say, that's not cool. What right does any intelligence, if they're supposed to be sort of friendly, what right do they have to knock us out in terms of consciousness and even out of sleep, and take us someplace and extract sperm and extract eggs and skin and leave red marks and do all of that as if we were then treated as a species that was to be branded or harvested for something else. On the other side of that exact same coin, you can look at it. I take Chocolate and I take Fluffy to the vet periodically, and they go absolutely crazy. No, cats like to go to vets, and you want to be able to say, but this is what's good for you. And I read something recently. It came in an email, and it was a person talking about the grays, that they had encountered grays. And they had some, it was all telepathic. And the person was saying telepathically, like, this is our planet. Why are you here? Why don't you leave us alone? And the last sentence was, and the gray telepathed to me an image of a round rock and said, if we were not here now and had not been here in the past, this is what your planet would look like now, a rock. So we have been so deliberately kept out of the true story for so long, for centuries. It is like trying to deal with those pointillismo paintings. When you think you've got the truth going this way and something happens and it pulls you this way and this way and this way, and that is the state that I think we're all in, truthfully, then we don't know the whole facts, that's for sure. So I hope that helps a little. Peggy.
A viewer would love to know what you think about what they found on Venus.
Oh, yes, and I have a story at myearthfiles.com, and hope that you all start complementing My Earthfiles live broadcasts with Earthfiles, which is my news channel, earthfiles.com, at the website, because I do animal mutilations and some stories that are real X-Files there that I feel I can't do comfortably in the public and on YouTube. And Venus is not in the category of something scary. Venus is in the category of finding more and more facts that when you start adding them all up, in this case, the fact that they've got phosphine on, which is a chemical that they found at about 30 miles up in the atmosphere of Venus, phosphine, that on Earth, it is associated as a biomarker for life. And a lot of scientists, as you will see in my story, they say this is not proof of life. So what they have to do is find out what would be generating a gas in an atmosphere that they have found in Jupiter, and they have found in Mars, and they have found in other places. And could it be a biomarker as it is on Earth, or is it something else? And the something else is where now the investigations are going to go. Can they come up with an explanation on a planet as hot as Venus is at the surface? Would it actually have any life forms, microbial, at about 30 miles up? Well, it turns out in the last couple of years, there have been papers by astrophysicists who have hypothesized that it's temperature related, that so much of microbial life form is related to temperatures, and that if you come up 30 miles above the surface of Venus, you get to one of those sweet spots in temperatures, and that the argument was even before this discovery that you might find microbial life. So it's part of this revolution that we are in. It feels like we're just going to be bursting with new insights about other life and life forms, not only in our solar system, but beyond. And Venus is one of those stories. What else have we got?
I don't know if this is too big, but the question is, does black matter play into the phenomenon of evens and parallel universes?
Dark matter, I think, is what they mean. Dark matter.
You might be right. I think
Yeah.
they said black matter, but I think dark matter.
Yeah, dark matter and dark energy. I'll tell you, this is not academic physics, but what keeps sort of inserting itself, whether it's through abductees, whether it's talking with theologians, whether it's talking with a physicist like Thomas Campbell, who has that wonderful statement that this universe is an entropy reduction trainer for souls, entropy being all winding down of energy. Get rid of it. You can get rid of it with love and light and life. Is the bigger, I'm just going to say the bigger lens that's beginning to emerge is that dark energy and dark matter might have something to do with parallel dimensions, parallel universes, that we don't understand the structure, that we think of this universe, this is it, but that it's not. And if Roger Penrose is correct, it's infinite. It's cycle after cycle after cycle, and it's infinite. And I think that astrophysicists are beginning to work around this idea that dark energy and dark matter could be related to another dimension, at least one, that parallels this one. Some of that discussion has come up since the discovery of those particles that were coming up from underneath Antarctica, up and out. And then there have been reports that these particles coming the way they did implied a complete reversal in time. The particles were the opposite of our timeline. And that is what has been leading into these papers and issues about parallel dimensions, that our Earth and this universe could have a parallel other dimension or even a universe that might begin to explain some of these anomalies that we don't understand, and that there is a puzzle also about the proliferation and size of so many black holes. I think it's now almost a rule. Every galaxy is going to have some kind of a black hole somewhere at the center. Why is that? Why is this universe working this way? And what if we do have a black hole out and beyond the Oort cloud, or in the Oort cloud, that would explain why the so-called Planet 9 discovery about 5 years ago by Professor Michael Brown. I still remember interviewing him twice about going to telescopes in Hawaii in order to keep looking to see if they could find any heat signature. They had tried in light and they hadn't seen anything, and then they went into infrared and they still couldn't find it, and they were thinking anything that would be 10 times the mass of the Earth out at between the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud, or more in the Oort cloud, why couldn't they see it in some form? And now there comes this new paper presenting the possibility that sort of on our astronomical doorstep is a black hole out there. Well, that sort of ties back to this question on dark matter, dark energy, ET technology. Spartan 1, in my documentary on Antarctica and everything that Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 had to do, was ETs know how to create portals so that they can move around the universe, hopping place to place. And maybe there is some way to generate or make there be this collapse and that a black hole out there might be used to come to this part of this universe fast from someplace else, and maybe it's literally constructed, generated by advanced physics that we know nothing about. Those are actual discussions that scientists and others have had. So from Venus to dark matter and dark energy. The dark matter and dark energy are still a real challenge. But maybe what I've just talked about in these pieces that keep emerging, whether you're in talking about other life in the universe or just the particles in Antarctica, they're always pointing to, we don't fully understand yet really what kind of universe we are in. Okay, Peggy.
One of our viewers would like to know.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because my clock over here I can't see. I've gone past my hour.
How about just one more for
All
the
right.
road?
All right.
We have a viewer that would like to know, are there more crop circles showing up around the world? Because they haven't seen much news on it.
I would say that 2020 has, it hasn't risen up on the list of things that are happening. I'll just give you a quick view from my own experiences in England. My first trip there was 1992, and then I was back 93, 94, 95. And in that period of time, there were so many crop formations. It was so exciting. You would be getting into a crop formation where you could still feel this unbelievable energy in them that I saw with my own eyes at Woodborough Hill, kind of an orangish gold orb, maybe about the size of a softball, moving around the trees that were up there. I have seen orbs down in a wheat field where we were parked to do a night watch. I have seen videos of 6 orbs moving at the base of Woodborough Hill when there was 2 crop formations and a big black helicopter comes over the hill and the 6 orbs fly away. There was a magic, there was an excitement, there was this feeling like something was trying to knock your consciousness open, that in the skin, the surface skin of the earth, in cereal crops, that something could come, interact, do mathematical language, tie back to ancient other knowledge. There was so much other languages, the binary code. And then it moved into a phase where something, perhaps military, seemed to order a interference to make sure that the world thought it was all phony and sort of concocted by these people who came in called Team Satan 666. That was a flag that they were doing that on purpose to scare people. Today, there hasn't been any of that feeling of electricity, of high energy, of dozens and dozens and dozens of formations just coming one after the other for quite a long time.